Shine bright like a diamond.
So fellas, this week is the trilogy. Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier 3. Dustin Poirier's last ever fight. Joe Rogan's not going to be commentating this event, but for a super hardcore fan, at least that's what he claims himself, you'd think it's short for Dustin Poirier's last fight, but apparently not. In terms of the card itself, if I had to rate the card, I'm giving it a 5 out of 10. It is a very weak card. It's not the worst card ever. Like, people are acting like it's the worst card. There are some pretty good fights. It's not even the worst one this year, but it's definitely below average for a pay-per-view. I'm giving it a 5 out of 10. There are some good fights, just no star power, but we'll go in there with the first fight. With Carli, Judice versus Nicolle Caliari. If you're actually sitting here watching me break down Carli, Judice versus Caliari, shout out to you. But anyway, the style of Carli Judice, she's a dangerous, dynamic kickboxer. All of her wins, even though she's only got 4, and she's got a record of 4-3, all come by finish. She's a pretty dangerous kickboxer who struggles with size and rangy opponents. And Nicolle Caliari, she's more of like a brawly stand-up fighter who looks to take the fight to the mat. That's what she tried to do in her last fight, try and implement in the grappling at every occasion, but she kind of brawls when she's standing up. I'm going to go with Carli Judice to win this one by decision. She had one of the most brutal KOs, I think, of this year. It was in January this year where she knocked out Judice Dubin, head kick KO out cold, and that was when Dubin was a good prospect with a lot of finishes on her name, and Caliari just hasn't really impressed me. She fought Karakate, who also beat Carli Judice, but her grappling wasn't looking amazing in that fight. She looked very scrappy in the stand-up, did Caliari, and she ended up losing the fight. So I think Judice Dubin keeps the fight standing and just picks apart Caliari. It is a tough one to call. It's low-level women MMA, but Carli Judice just came off one of the best KOs I've seen in women MMA this year. She is a dangerous kickboxer. She has got heavy hands, and Caliari is nowhere near the same level on the feet, and I don't see her as a big grappling threat to the point where she's going to be able to take down Carli Judice and control the fight there. So I'm going to go with Carli Judice to win this one. Again, low-level women MMA, but she's come off one of the best highlight reels in women MMA this year. Nicolle Caliari, you know what they say about women MMA, don't bet on the more attractive woman. I'm going Carli Judice to win this one by decision. Then we have Brunno Ferreira versus Jackson Mcvey. It was supposed to be Brunno Ferreira versus Ikram, which would have been a banger and much needed for this card, but that's now off. We've got Jackson Mcvey. I feel bad for Jackson Mcvey because he was supposed to fight on short notice last pay-per-view, and now he's fighting on this pay-per-view against bloody Brunno Ferreira, which is the last guy you want to be taking on. Anyway, the style of Brunno Ferreira, he's powerful as fuck. He's one of the most powerful middleweights on the roster, and he's got like a brawly style on the feet. He looks to brawl, but he's got a really bad habit of just spamming the spinning elbow. It's like he's on a UFC game and he's spamming the same move. It's just the same spinning elbow over and over again. Jackson Mcvey, I already know how he fights. I've seen some tape on him because of the last pay-per-view. He's essentially a rangy kick spammer when he's striking, but he has heavyweight speed. He's got very slow reactions, very slow speed, kind of spams kicks and uses his range, but he does look to implement the grappling and look for submissions. That's kind of his style. He's more of a submission artist who uses his range on the feet, but I am going to go with Brunno Ferreira by KO in the first round. Yeah, Brunno Ferreira is an absolute force to be reckoned with in the middleweight division. He is one of the most dangerous dudes unranked at middleweight. Hits like an absolute truck. He's put people to sleep before. That KO over Dustin Stoltzfus last year was insane. Again, he does kind of spam the same move over and over again, and that cost him in the Abbas Magomedov fight, which he nearly won, but he's very, very powerful. And for Jackson Mcvey, I just don't really see anything too special in him. He's a very subpar, below average striker. He has got BJJ ability, but it's not like he's come and won in any of these, insane promotions. So I think Brunno Ferreira is going to KO him in the first round. He has had a full training camp for this as well. He was preparing for Ikram, which is one of the toughest fights you can take at unranked at middleweight. So I'm expecting Brunno Ferreira to go out there and dominate him, find the chin of Jackson Mcvey early, put him to sleep, and KO him out cold. And hopefully after that, it's not going to be too long before we see Brunno Ferreira get a shot at the rankings. Like I said, he's fight with Abbas Magomedov as well. He lost that fight, but he was close to finishing Abbas Magomedov a couple of times. And apart from that, he submitted Elman Petrosyan, and he finished Phil Horst, finished Dustin Stoltzfus, hits like a truck. Jackson Mcvey, just another regional fight, hasn't come from like a big organization, hasn't really had an insane track record. I don't even think he came from the Contender Series. So I'm going to go Brunno Ferreira by KO in the first round, clubbing overhand right, lands on Jackson Mcvey, and he chins him early on. Then we have Ryan Spann versus Lukasz Brzeski, the movable object versus the stoppable force. The style of Ryan Spann, he's a ploddy striker with very awful striking. He kind of plods all over the place, but he usually wins because of his KO power. He has a really good win over Dominic Reyes, and that's purely because of his KO power. And he also has awful fight IQ. Remember when he fought Nikita Krylov, and he threw himself into a triangle. He's a ploddy striker at heavyweight with awful fight IQ. Lukasz Brzeski is a low-level striker with no defense or chin at all. I think he's got a record of like 1-5 in the UFC. I don't know how he's still here, but I will say he actually has decent speed and athleticism for a heavyweight. Compared to a lot of the heavyweights, heavyweights, his speed and athleticism is pretty good. The only issue is he lacks the MMA part. He's good at everything when it comes to, you know, heavyweight MMA, apart from the actual MMA part of it. He just cannot fight. So I'm going to go with Ryan Spann by KO in the first round. Ryan Spann, his boxing ability and his ability to find the chin isn't that bad. Like I said, he's slept Dominic Reyes before, and we've seen Lukasz Brzeski being chinned multiple times. He's been chinned by Mick Parkin, Waldo Cortez Acosta. It's evidently not hard to find the chin of Lukasz Brzeski, and I think when you put him against a guy who hits pretty hard like Ryan Spann, I'm expecting Ryan Spann to go out there and find the chin of Lukasz Brzeski. And even in other fights, like I said with Ryan Spann, I mean, even in his fight with Bogdan Guskov, for example, he was winning that fight with Bogdan Guskov. The fight with Anthony Smith, he arguably won that fight too. So I feel like for Ryan Spann, he's definitely not a high-level heavyweight by any means, and he did just get knocked out by Waldo Cortez Acosta, but Lukasz Brzeski might be one of the worst fighters on the roster, so I'm hoping that Ryan Spann is able to find the chin of Lukasz Brzeski. If Mick Parkin can do it, who's not known for his athleticism, and some other guys can do it, I'm expecting Ryan Spann to be able to do it too. So I'm going to go Ryan Spann to get his first win in the heavyweight division, knock out Lukasz Brzeski. Wouldn't surprise me if the UFC still keep Lukasz in the UFC after this fight, but I'm going Ryan Spann. KO in the first round. Jimmy Crute versus Marcin Prachnio. This is this is the fight that everyone's been waiting for. The style of Jimmy Crute. He's a bit of a bulldozing pressure boxer, is Jimmy Crute, but his striking pressure doesn't match his ability. Jimmy Crute fights like he's one of the best boxers in the UFC, bulldozing people, backing them against the cage, you know, just always in your face, but his striking just isn't as good as you think it is. And he's got awful stamina. He absolutely 10-8'd Rodolfo Bellato in the first round in his last fight, and then completely gassed out and screwed himself for the rest of the fight. So he has got awful stamina. Marcin Prachnio, he's just an average kickboxer, but he looks exhausted no matter what. He's not bad. He's not great. He's a very average kickboxer for unranked in the light heavyweight division, but he just looks exhausted no matter what, which I think doesn't help on the judges. I'm going to go with Jimmy Crute by decision, but it's not a confident pick. Yeah, Jimmy Crute did look good in his last fight against Rodolfo Bellato. He nearly finished him in the first round until he completely gassed out after throwing the kitchen sink. And Marcin Prachnio, he's a very average kickboxer. It's not necessarily hard to beat him. Any elite striker should be able to beat Marcin Prachnio, and I think Jimmy Crute is by no means elite. He's definitely on a bit of a fall off. He's in a weird stage of his career, but I'm expecting him to go out there and beat Marcin Prachnio. I just think he wins probably like some sort of 29-28. You know, wins the first two rounds. Maybe Prachnio can win later on. I'm just hoping that Jimmy Crute can get through. Like I said, he looked good against Bellato in his last fight before he completely gassed out. Hopefully he doesn't get the jitters and just completely throws the kitchen sink at Prachnio, because Prachnio's a weird one. You know, he loses to, you know, the likes of Modestas Bukauskas. He beat Devin Clark and William Knight. I'm pretty sure those guys ain't even in the UFC anymore, and he is just a bit of an average striker. So hopefully Jimmy Crute, for the sake of this division, can get through. He was once the biggest prospect in this division. To see him in this state, to the point where I'm barely picking him to beat Marcin Prachnio, is quite depressing, to be honest. But Jimmy Crute by decision is my pick. If Jimmy Crute doesn't win this one, or whoever loses this fight for the matter, may as well be cut from the UFC. I mean, let's be honest. Jimmy Crute by decision is my pick. Middleweight Francis Ngannou, Ateba Gautier is going to be taking on Robert Valentin. Yeah, like I said, Ateba Gautier is essentially the middleweight Francis Ngannou from Cameroon. I think all of his wins are by KO. Yeah, this dude's an absolute force to be reckoned with. He's a patient boxer who hits like not one but two trucks. He has great power for the middleweight division, and he is dangerous as fuck. He fought Jose Medina in his last fight, who's known for having a decent chin, and just chinned him off the bat. Robert Valentin is this tall Swiss submission grappler. That's kind of his style, submitting people. He has got very average stand-up, but he has got decent clinch work, and he kind of showcased that, where he's able to defend quite a few takedowns from Torres Finney, but he's not great defensively, whether it be from his grappling, whether it be from the stand-up. He isn't a great defensive fighter as Robert Valentin, although his last two fights in the UFC have both been against grapplers. He hasn't fought just a pure striker yet. Yeah, Ateba Gautier hits like a fucking truck. He's one of the best prospects, and there's a lot of prospects in the middleweight division. Hits very hard, looked good in the Contender Series. He hasn't got like crazy, you know, insanely skilled boxing. He does look pretty average for a guy coming from the Contender Series when it comes to his hand, when it comes to his boxing, but he's able to find the shot. He hits like a truck. He trains out of a good team as well in Manchester Top Team. And Robert Valentin, I can only feel like this fight has been made up to build the name of Ateba Gautier. I'm going Ateba Gautier to win this one by KO in the first round. I just think he chins Robert Valentin, gets him backed up against the cage, just like he did to Jose Medina, and finds the chin of Robert Valentin. Robert Valentin has not really showcased anything in the UFC, dominated by Torres Finney and out-grappled and TKO'd, I think it was, by Ryan Lauder. He hasn't really shown to be UFC worthy. He did come through on the Ultimate Fighter, but I just don't see him beating Ateba Gautier. Unless Ateba Gautier was this, you know, highly fraudulent grapple that's able to get taken down with ease, I don't see a world where Valentin wins this one. I think Gautier goes out there, chins him in the first, Ateba Gautier by KO in the first round. Aben Fugitt, Adam Fugitt versus Islam Dulatov. Dulatov's probably Germany's best prospect right now, with a lot of people hyping up the name of Islam Dulatov. Anyway, the style of Adam Fugitt essentially is he's a low-level striker, but he's kind of built for dogfights. He's not that boring, he's Adam Fugitt. He has had a couple of boring performances, but like the one with Morales, for example, was quite fun. I feel like he's built for dogfights, but he is quite low-level. Islam Dulatov, he's a well-rounded and dangerous fighter, dangerous submission ability, dangerous striking ability. He does predominantly strike more than anything, but like I said, he has got submission ability. Very well-rounded fighter who can win the fight anywhere the fight goes. And I'm going to go with Islam Dulatov to win this one by KO in the first round. Like I said, you look at his record, 100% finishing rate, 6 KOs and 5 submissions. Very well-rounded dude. Got a KO in the Contender Series in his most recent fight. And he looks to be quite promising as well. He is one of the best German prospects coming from the regional scene. Looked pretty good in the regional scene too. Always able to find the button. Walks in there with carelessness, backing people against the cage and just chinning them. And like I said, he has got a pretty impressive regional run as Islam Dulatov. And like I said, if Adam Fugitt, he's tough, but tough doesn't equal being a great fighter. He's been chinned before, I guess. Like I said, he was able to hang in there against Michael Morales, to be fair. He actually gave Michael Morales something to think about, but he's not by any means high level. I think he gets chinned by Dulatov easily. I think Dulatov's a better grappler. I think Dulatov's a better striker. I don't see Fugitt winning this one. Unless he can somehow tough it out and make it to a decision, I think Dulatov is going to chin him in the first round. Like I said, one of the better prospects coming over to the UFC in 2025. Really good regional career. Not like one of these Jackson Mcvey type fighters where he's coming with, on short notice. He has got quite a talented resume before the UFC. Looked good in the Contender Series. Got a lot of hype to his name. Dulatov by KO in the first round over Adam Fugitt. And then we've got Francisco Prado versus Nicolle Veretennikov. I'm surprised that Veretenikov's back in the UFC. He's 0-2. And I'm pretty sure he pushed Austin Vanderford in his last fight after he got beaten and then submitted. So I'm surprised the UFC have still given him an opportunity. But anyway, Francisco Prado, he's a short boxer who throws with intent. He's very small for 170, but he absolutely swings and hammers his, just swings his punches with full force. And he's, again, kind of made for dogfights, but he does struggle with the size and range, especially at 170. He was undersized against Daniel Zellhuber. I don't know why he's decided to stay at 170 as Francisco Prado. But Veretennikov, he's a bit of a hesitant striker who finds success as the strike progresses. Yeah, in that fight with Danny Barlow, he was very, very hesitant early on, barely threw anything, and kind of only turned it up in the later rounds. And he's just not particularly anywhere. He's not a particularly grappler. He just got dominated on the ground. He's not an elite striker. He's just the fighter of all time. I'm going to go with Francisco Prado by decision. Not a super confident pick because Prado, like I said, does struggle with more rangy guys, but I just don't really rate Veretennikov that much. He got beaten by Danny Barlow. I think a judge gave him 30-27, which was a horrible scorecard because he got beaten for at least 2 rounds by Danny Barlow in that fight, and he's just been dominated by Austin Vanderford in his most recent fight. And yes, that was with the grappling. I don't see Prado grappling him, but Prado's not that bad of a fighter. He's had success in some of his fights. Like, he was able to land on Jamie Mullarkey a few times. Even against Daniel Zellhuber, he was able to dog it out for a couple of rounds. Knocked out Otman Zator too. He has got pretty dangerous striking. He is a bit of a swinger as Francisco Prado. Not necessarily elite, but I can see him landing some big shots on Veretennikov. So I'm going to go Francisco Prado by decision. He's fought some tough dudes in the UFC, made it quite competitive. Veretennikov, again, I'm surprised he's still in the UFC. He's shown me absolutely nothing that's impressive. I wouldn't be massively surprised if Veretennikov can pull this one off because Prado, I don't really think should be fighting at 170, but I'm going to go Francisco Prado by decision. And now we've got the fight that kind of starts to heat the card up. Phillips versus Vinicius Oliveira. I think Vinicius Oliveira is one of the best prospects in the UFC. Definitely the best bantamweight prospect as he takes on Phillips. The style of Phillips, he's a high output kickboxer who looks to kind of pick opponents apart and get the decision win. He has got a great gas tank and a great pace for the bantamweight division, but he's not necessarily a world beater. He's not one of the best fighters in the bantamweight division. He is kind of relies on his attributes, throws things kind of weirdly without any telegraph. He is a tough cookie, but not exactly elite. And for Vinicius Oliveira, he's a pressure kickboxer who picks his opponents apart at range, and he kind of has like a fighting Nerds-esque style. He's kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. He's got this wide stance, picks people apart, yet pressures them, perfect at mastering the range. Reminds me of the Fighting Nerds, and he likes to taunt people when he's in the floor. He likes to start taunting people, starts getting in the groove, and he's very tough as well. I'm going to go with Vinicius Oliveira to win this one by a dominant 30-27 decision. Yeah, Vinicius Oliveira, like I said, is one of my favourite prospects in the bantamweight division. He absolutely KO'd Bernardo Sapage last year with one of the best flying knees I've seen. He was battering in the entire fight and then goes for a flying knee and slumps him. And even in his fight with, what's his name, Said Nurmagomedov, he had a broken rib against Said Nurmagomedov, who's known for being a great striker and was able to pick side apart at times in that fight. And in the fight with Ricky Simon, who's meant to be one of the toughest guys and is now on a 2-fight winning streak, he absolutely dominated Ricky Simon in the fight, 30-27 on the feet. So I'm a huge fan of Vinicius Oliveira. I really do rate his striking. And I don't know about how I feel about Kyler Phillips. He has just been beaten pretty comfortably by Rob Font, and he did look good before that. You know, like I said, he's very well-rounded dude with good pace on the feet, was able to beat Pedro Munoz, but I do rate Vinicius Oliveira quite far. I think he'll eventually hit the top 10 of the bantamweight division, maybe even the top 7. Very, very tough dude. Tall, rangy, but masters the range perfectly. Great output as well. Vinicius Oliveira hasn't really shown to have any flaws in the UFC so far. I'm picking him to pick apart Kyler Phillips. Maybe the momentum's on my side in this one, but I just don't really see Kyler Phillips posing any big problems to Vinicius Oliveira. It's not going to be grappling issues from Vinicius Oliveira. We just saw Kyler Phillips against a better striker and Rob Font, and Font was able to pick him apart too. So I'm expecting big things from Vinicius Oliveira. 30-27, keeps Kyler Phillips on the back foot just like Rob Font did, and picks him apart at range and gets the decision win. And still undefeated in the UFC, Vinicius Oliveira. Yeah, I'm going to go Oliveira to win this one by decision. Then we're on to the main card, Marvin Vettori versus Brendan Allen. To be fair, the matchmaking isn't bad. I would have preferred this as like a fight night main event in the Apex, but because they've got such a big rivalry, the UFC have actually done well. I'm interested for the press conference between the two of them. Anyway, the style of Marvin Vettori, he's well-rounded, but he's not elite anyway. The fact that this guy was a top 5 middleweight, actually fought for the belt in 2021, is a perfect representative of how shit the middleweight division was back in 2021 that Marvin Vettori fought for the belt. But I will say, he has probably got the best chin in the UFC now. I think he has got the best chin in the UFC, so he's got that for his name. Brendan Allen, he's a talented grappler who simply wants to take you to the mat and get the submission. He can stand on the feet as well to a decent extent. He's not super one-dimensional. He can stand, but he prefers to take the fight to the mat. But he has got questionable fight IQ. He fought Anthony Hernandez in his most recent fight. He didn't even look half bad against Hernandez, but he kept putting himself in bad positions, and because of that, he ended up losing the fight. So I think the fight IQ of Brendan Allen is something to look out for as well. And even in his fight with Imavov, he dominated Imavov in that first round and then just completely got beaten in the second and the third. I'm going to go with Brendan Allen to win this one by decision. Yeah, I think Brendan Allen's going to take down and dominate Marvin Vettori in this fight. I do really rate the grappling of Brendan Allen. I think he's one of the best in this division. He's shown it on multiple different occasions. He looked good against Hernandez. He submitted Paul Craig, who's an elite BJJ artist. I really do feel like his grappling is next level. And for Marvin Vettori, he's just inconsistent. He's losing fights on a consistent basis. He's been looking worse after every performance. And people like to call Marvin Vettori a good grappler. He was never a good grappler. The only reason people call him a good grappler is because the middleweight division was that poor a few years ago that his grappling actually stood out. And even in the stand-up side of things too, Brendan Allen can stand. Even if the fight does neutralize and it stays on the feet, I'd actually probably favor Brendan Allen. He looked good on the feet against Chris Curtis and Anthony Hernandez, and yeah, I'm going to go with Brendan Allen to win this one. I'm hoping that he gets this one done because he is a really talented dude. Decent striker with amazing grappling too. He's impressed me in that fight with Chris Curtis, even though it was short notice for Curtis. And Marvin Vettori, you know, he gets worse after every performance. He's not been particularly active. He looked horrible against Roma Delide this year. So I'm going to go with Brendan Allen to win this one by decision. Out grapples Marvin Vettori, potentially even picks up a submission. And even if the fight stays standard, I think Allen can definitely hang in there. So I'm going to go with Brendan Allen to win the decision. But most important, I'm actually looking forward to the press conference more than I am for the entire fight, because I really do want to see how they go at each other, especially with Vettori and how he historically does at press conferences. Anyway, moving up the card, we've got Michael Johnson against Daniel Zellhuber. I think this is Michael Johnson's 30th fight in the UFC, so fair play. The style of Michael Johnson, he could beat Poirier and then lose to a Dana White Contender Series debutant. He might be the most inconsistent fighter in the UFC. On one hand, he looks like a world beater. He's actually got a win over Dustin Poirier, and he nearly finished Gaethje in Gaethje's debut. But then you can put him against like some random cad, it'll get chinned. He is essentially a dangerous striker with pretty quick hands, but he does have quite a poor chin. And for Daniel Zellhuber, he's a tall, lanky, and rangy kickboxer for 155, but he has got really good accuracy and output. You know, he usually kind of picks people apart. He's in multiple Fight of the Year contenders. I'm going to go with Zellhuber by TKO in the third round against Michael Johnson. It's really hard to predict a Michael Johnson fight because, again, I have no idea how he's going to look. He could look awful in this fight and go out there and get chinned early on by Daniel Zellhuber, which wouldn't surprise me. Or he could look amazing. I mean, he's on a 2-fight winning streak. He just slept up in his Atar. He might have hit a second win in his career, but I'm a huge fan of Daniel Zellhuber. High output striker with pop in his shots. Made it very close against Esteban Ribovics in one of the best fights I've ever seen last year. Like, even in the fight with Francisco Prado, he completely picked apart Francisco Prado at range. He's a very dynamic kickboxer. I think Daniel Zellhuber has got a lot of potential. in this division at 155, and I think if he ends up being in a bit of a dogfight with Michael Johnson, as dangerous as Michael Johnson is, I don't think his chin is going to hold up as good as maybe somebody like Rybovics and Prado. So I do think Daniel Zellhuber will eventually get the TKO in the third round. I'm expecting it to be a bit of a back and forth scrap, but I think the range of Daniel Zellhuber, as well as the fact that Michael Johnson's chin doesn't really hold up that much, I'm going to go Daniel Zellhuber to win this one by TKO in the third round. But if Michael Johnson can pull this off, fuck it, man. Give him like someone in the top 15. If Gaethje loses to Paddy Pimblett and Michael Johnson beats Zellhuber, fuck it. Michael Johnson versus Justin Gaethje part 2, an all-time fight for the ages, and I'd probably favour Johnson to win that fight. But in this one, I'm going to go Daniel Zellhuber. Dan Ige versus Patricio Pitbull. Interesting matchmaking with this one, because even though this is quite a big step down for Pitbull, who said that he's UFC worthy? And this is stylistically quite a difficult fight. The style of Dan Ige, he's a short pressure boxer who wants to land a clubbing right hand at the perfect time to put you to sleep. He also has great BJJ, but he does usually get outclassed by top strikers and grapplers. He's a bit of a gatekeeper in the featherweight division because he just, I think he's lost to every single fighter who's been in the rankings above him. He's got like a record of like 0-8 or something, so he usually gets outclassed by the elitist. And for Patricio Pitbull, he's known for dangerous grappling with KO power, but he looked very, very timid in his UFC debut a couple of months back against Yair Rodriguez, and he's known for having great BJJ, but again, I'm unsure if it's something he can implement in the UFC. This is a tough fight to call, because on the one hand, it's Patricio Pitbull. Even though he looks shit against Yair, he still has the name value, and this is quite a big step down. But on top of that, Patricio Pitbull might not be UFC worthy, and Dan Ige is stylistically a tough fight. I'm going to go with Dan Ige to win this one by decision. Yeah, Patricio Pitbull ain't in his prime. He's 38 years old, and he just had a career worst performance against Yair Rodriguez, got dominated by Yair. And again, it's tough, because I feel like Yair would do the same thing to Dan Ige, so I don't know how much I want to critique Pitbull on that performance coming into this fight, but Dan Ige is a terrible matchup. He has got really short, powerful boxing. He's got KO ability. I'd say he's probably a better boxer in the pocket, at least, than Patricio Pitbull. He has got very hard-hitting striking, and his BJJ is good as well. He doesn't really use it, but he has got BJJ, so if the fight does go to the mat, I trust that Dan Ige's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is going to be enough to, you know, avoid anything crazy from Pitbull. And I'm sorry, Pitbull, but if you can't implement the BJJ against Yair Rodriguez, who's one of the worst wrestlers, at least, in this division, I don't see him doing it against Dan Ige. I think the fight stays standing, and I'm going to go with Dan Ige to win this one by decision. It should be interesting to see how Patricio Pitbull does against someone more of his size rather than a tall, rangy guy. But yeah, I'm just going to go with Dan Ige. It's a very tough one to call. Patricio Pitbull might look like a world beater in this performance, because again, we still don't really know what level he's at in the UFC, but I'm going to go with Dan Ige by decision. Better boxer, picks apart Patricio Pitbull, probably lands the most significant shots, and based off how we saw Pitbull compete against Yair Rodriguez, even though that's a much better guy than Dan Ige, he didn't look great. I'm going to go Dan Ige by decision. Kevin Holland is back for the 4th time this year as he takes on Daniel Rodriguez. Bit of a weird match, but I understand why they're doing it. They're trying to keep Kevin Holland active. The style of Kevin Holland, he's a lanky, rangy kickboxer with very dangerous hands. His wrestling usually sucks, but he has got sneaky submissions. He pulled one off in his last fight against Vicente Luque, and for D-Rod, he's a technical output boxer, but he does lack basic defense, and again, he will usually just get outclassed by anybody elite. He came off a really good performance over Ponzinibbio in his most recent fight a couple of months back, but again, it was quite a competitive fight previous to him chinning Ponzinibbio. I'm going to go with Kevin Holland by KO in the first round. Yeah, Holland, he's found his home at 170. And he is a very dangerous striker. He's very quick. He's very good at getting in and out. He's very rangy, tall, lanky, and he hits very hard. And I just don't really know how much I rate D-Rod. I don't think he's top 15 worthy. You know, we got caught a lot in that fight with Kelvin Gastelum. Even Alex Morono took him to quite a war. And I just feel like D-Rod gets in too many dogfights, and he gets hit too much for my liking in this fight. So I'm going to go with Kevin Holland, who's finally found some momentum to chin D-Rod in the first round. It could be quite interesting because D-Rod, you know, he's not necessarily known for having a bad chin, and he is himself a pretty good boxer, but I just think you put him against anybody elite like Kevin Holland and he gets chinned. I think Kevin Holland will find the chin of Daniel Rodriguez early on, clip him, and get the KO early on against D-Rod. So I'm going to go Kevin Holland by KO in the first round. A bit of a step down, actually, from Vicente Luque in terms of competition. D-Rod's tough, always going to be one of the better boxers at 170, unranked, but I just don't think he's top 15 worthy. He's had way too many close fights with guys that shouldn't really, you know, be compared to Kevin Holland. So I'm going to go Holland by KO in the first round with his 3rd win in a row this year. Co-main event, Paulo Costa returns for his annual fight against Roman Kopylov. The style of Paulo Costa, he used to walk forward and absolutely terminate people with explosive kickboxing. He used to be one of the biggest, like the scariest dudes at middleweight, but he's more hesitant and less willing to engage ever since Adesanya bummed him. And he's a powerful ass dude though, nearly knocked out Whittaker last year. And for Roman Kopylov, he will just break you down with striking until he finds the button. He's essentially a snappy kickboxer with rapid kicks, great body kicks and head kicks. And what I love about Roman Kopylov is he's the perfect mix of technique and power. You can have some guys in the UFC that are very hard hitting, you know, ability. You can have some guys that are really technical like Leon Edwards. What I love about Roman Kopylov is he perfectly mixes technique and power, and he's one of my favorite strikers in the UFC, and I'm picking Kopylov to win this one by decision. I think he absolutely dominates Paulo Costa 30-27. Paulo Costa was never the same since he got absolutely dominated, and essentially his soul was taken by Adesanya in more ways than one. Roman Kopylov's one of the best strikers in the middleweight division. Like I said, his technical ability on the feet is like no other. He can pick people apart, but he's also very, very dangerous. Evidently hits quite hard, and when he finds the button, you know, he's able to really put on a work. And in his most recent fight with Chris Curtis, he picked apart Chris Curtis for 2 rounds straight. It was a bit of an early stoppage. He got the finish in the last second, but he absolutely picked apart Chris Curtis in that dogfight. And for Paulo Costa, he's way too hesitant. He got walked forward by Sean Strickland for 25 minutes. Whittaker, apart from when he caught Whittaker with that head kick, was beating him. He got done by Vettori, done by Adesanya. He hasn't got a win over any single fighter currently signed to the UFC, and all of his wins have all been against older guys like Luke Rockhold, who also made it a dogfight against Paulo Costa. I think we're going to see a very dominant performance from Roman Kopylov. Again, with the inactivity of Paulo Costa, I think Roman Kopylov's going to put in a masterclass, walks forward Paulo Costa, and simply picks him apart for 25 minutes and absolutely batters him with the kickboxing. Unless Paulo Costa can somehow find some Hail Mary shot, which I just don't expect him to do against a seasoned striker from Roman Kopylov, I think we're going to see a Kopylov masterclass. I'm going Kopylov, dominant 30-27 decision. But to be fair, even though neither of them really have that much star value anymore, it should be quite a good fight for a co-main event, which leads us on to the main event. Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier. Number 3 for Dustin Poirier's last fight. The style of Max Holloway, he's got elite boxing. Both of these guys, some of the best boxers in the UFC. He picks people to pieces with his combinations and his accuracy. One of the most accurate boxers, and I love his use of combinations. He's got an amazing pace and stamina. When he was at 145, he was highlighted for having some of the best stamina in the UFC. And I know he's just been chinned by Poirier, but historically, he's had an elite chin and had one of the best chins in the UFC. And for Dustin Poirier, again, an elite boxer, but he's a little bit more patient than Max Holloway, but he's slick when he gets in the flow of things. Great stamina again. He's been in many 5-round wars, and he does utilize the low kicks, and he does tend to jump the gilly a lot. But I'm going to go with Max Holloway to beat Dustin Poirier by decision. Max Holloway, even though he has just been chinned by Poirier and he has lost his featherweight title fights, he looks really good in his last couple of performances. Like, look at his fight with Justin Gaethje. He beat the crap out of Justin Gaethje for 24 minutes, and then to put the cherry on top in the last round, pointed in the middle despite winning, and absolutely chinned Justin Gaethje, getting one of the best KOs. Before that, he dominated and knocked out Korean Zombie. Before that, he put an absolute, I don't want to say put a beating on, but, you know, he battered Arnold Allen as well. Max Holloway's consistently in fights where he's dominating people with the striking, even against Ilia Topuria. I thought he won that first round against Topuria until eventually later on in the fight he got chinned. And apart from that, he's been dominated by Volkanovski. But Max Holloway, at least last time we saw him at 155, he looked great. I feel like this is his division nowadays. And for Dustin Poirier, I mean, first things first, it's his last fight. What's his mindset going to be coming into his last fight in the UFC? Does he really give a fuck about winning? And if we're being real about Poirier, I'm not trying to discredit any of his fights, but Islam Makhachev was able to outstrike him a lot of the time. Yes, there was a threat of the takedown, but Makhachev was able to get his hands going. Justin Gaethje was able to put him to sleep a couple of fights ago brutally. In fact, if you look at Dustin Poirier's record, his last flawless performance was all the way back when he beat Conor McGregor by KO and the ankle injury. Oliveira got the submission, Gaethje put him to sleep, Makhachev submitted him, BSD dominated him on the feet and on the ground in the first round, Chandler nearly finished him in the first fight as well. So I'm going to go with Max Holloway to win this one by decision. I'm expecting it to be an absolute banger, don't get me wrong. I don't think it's going to be a Holloway cater performance, obviously. It is going to be a tough fight, and Dustin Poirier is currently 2-0 against Max Holloway. You've got to keep that into mind. But I feel like the fact that it's his last fight, Max Holloway, I don't want to say he's still hungry, but he's obviously still going to be active in the UFC, and he's looked good in his last few fights. I'm going to go with Max Holloway to win this one by decision. I think he has really found his division at 155, and I just simply think he outboxes Dustin Poirier pretty comfortably, at least for most of the rounds in this fight. I think Poirier might be able to nab a round or two here and there, and if it does get to the 5th round, I won't be surprised if they start throwing it down the middle and another Gaethje versus Holloway moment happens, considering it's Poirier's last fight. But I really do feel like Holloway's got this one. Justin Poirier, I just don't favour him in this fight. He has been looking a bit sharp, not sharp, what's the word? He has been looking a bit, I don't want to say stale because that suggests he's washed, but he hasn't been looking as great as I expected him to in some of his more recent performances. So I'm going to go Max Holloway to win this one by decision. Anyway, if I had to rank my picks by confidence, so if you are a betting man, the picks that I'm most confident in are Roman Kopylov, Kevin Holland, Ateba Gautier, Oliveira, Vinicius Oliveira, Islam Dulatov, and Brunno Ferreira. Those are the fighters that I'm very confident are going to get the win this Saturday night. The ones that I'm kind of medium confident in is going to be Brendan Allen, Daniel Zellhuber, Jimmy Crute, and Ryan Spann. I've got confidence in these guys, but I wouldn't bet the house on them. And then my low confidence picks are going to be Max Holloway. It could go either way, and Dustin Poirier is 2 above him. Carli, Judice, Danny Ige, and Francisco Prado. Anyway, bonus predictions. I think the first bonus will go to, and the fight of the night will go to, Poirier versus Holloway. There isn't a chance that these guys don't get some sort of bonus. You put 2 of the best output boxers in the UFC against each other, it's going to be fireworks, and I think it will be one of the best fights this year. So I'm expecting the first bonus and the fight of the night to go to Dustin Poirier and Max Holloway. The second bonus, I think, will go to Ateba Gautier. He's probably the biggest prospect on this card today, and I think he slumps Robert Valentin out cold, gets a good highlight reel. The UFC tend to kind of give a bonus to somebody on the prelims of a pay-per-view, and I think Ateba Gautier's got one of the best cases to being that guy. I think he slumps Robert Valentin. I think the third bonus will go to Kevin Holland. Yeah, Kevin Holland's going to be rewarded for his activity. He is one of the bigger names on the main card, and I think if he does go out there and knock out Rodriguez early on, the UFC will give him a bonus. I think the prospect of the night is going to be Ateba Gautier. In fact, no, it's probably going to be Vinicius Oliveira, but I'd say he's more of a contender if he beats Phillips. So I'm going to say Ateba Gautier is the prospect of the night. Yeah, this dude is being highlighted as the middleweight Francis Ngannou. He might not be a world beater based on his skill just yet, but he is very, very powerful, and I am expecting him to go out there and absolutely chin Robert Valentin. And the snooze fest of the night is probably going to be women MMA, so it's probably going to be Carli Judice versus Nicolle Caliari. I mean, 2 women. What are the chances it's going to be, anything but snooze fest of the night? I wouldn't bet on it. So those are my picks for UFC 318. Unfortunately, it is quite a subpar pay-per-view for Dustin Poirier's last fight, but the main event should make up for it. And again, if you're a hardcore fan, there are some pretty decent fights on this card. So let me know your thoughts and your picks for UFC 318. If you agree or disagree with the picks, let me know your thoughts, and thank you for watching.